Hello, hockey and basketball fans. My name is David. I thought I would start this video at 12:32 on the afternoon of Sunday, 22nd of January, 2023, North American Eastern Time. Well, there's no sugar, ladies and gents. I present you a video about the Raptors, the NBA's version of the Vancouver Canucks. Why do I say that the Raps have become this season pretty much a copy of the Canucks? Blown leads. Did the Canucks blow leads? Have the Canucks blown loads of leads this season? This NHL season? Yes. Have the Raptors done the same? Yes. Are the Canucks so far out of a playoff spot that, well, over a dozen points or so, that it's time to, well, make some big change to the roster and look forward to next season? Yep. There's no sugarcoating this, folks. Jim Rutherford, president of the Canucks, claimed in a presser last week that big changes had needed to be made to the Canucks roster. It was no surprise that big changes, that's saying a lot. That the changes had been piddly little ones. I mean, Ethan Bear, Jack Studnicka, new Canucks players, but to the big boy, to the bigger part, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, or OEL for short. So who do we have on the roster of the Canucks? Oh. Luke Schenn, Ilya Mikheyev, Andrei Kuzmenko. Lots of forward depth. And yes, the Canucks' problem has not been scoring as much as it's been keeping the puck on their own net. The Raptors have had a problem defending from inside of the paint in their own end, but also along the perimeter. You look at how many, there have been times in the ring, loads of three-pointers. The Timberwolves scored loads of three-pointers. It can be devastating. Yes, I don't like what happened with the Raptors. I've begun to follow the Raptors, but I also understand that there's no sugarcoating that this season is about to become a very lost one. I believe that Pascal Siakam, a key point getter for the Raps, should be the only member of that team to be put into a pile of so-called untouchables or near untouchables. He played his heart out, and yet even with him, the Raps haven't done a lot. How many pieces will the Raps move? Hard to tell. How many draft picks will they get in what rounds? I mean, the Leafs last offseason, got third and seventh round pick, and sent their way by the Sens for the Eastern Ontario team's offload of 3/4 of the cap hit of Matt Murray onto them. Well, Murray's been kind of inconsistent. And certainly the Leafs, I can do that as a fan of the Leafs, using Ilya Samsonov certainly been, well, last couple games have been better. I mean, it's no surprise, well, the Leafs ended up moving down a little bit in the so-called power rankings put up by the Hockey Guy YouTube man. I plan to post links later as soon as possible to all the videos which I've referred, because I think it's the right thing to do, and I enjoy watching those videos and all that. Certainly, it's hard to stay in the top two, but then again, I'm not surprised. I know the Leafs didn't have a great week in terms of play, but they got 5 points out of a possible 6. Compare that to a Calgary Flames squad that ended up getting just 2 out of a possible 6. Those 2 points having come against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Saturday afternoon Eastern Time. Well, no surprise there. The Flames did move down a bit. The Flames are in the 3rd row of the power rankings. The Leafs and Jets are on the top row, and the remaining Canadian teams are on the bottom row. Rows of 8 teams, whatever. But for me, I wish there was like a so-called power rankings put up by someone, by a so-called basketball guy, or at least basketball person. It would be so nice to have NBA power rankings. See where the Raptors go. They'd probably be in the bottom row. So I don't know. I don't know how we set up because they're not 32 teams. They're 30 or so, or 28, whatever. I don't know. There's no doubt that big changes need to come to the Raptors. I mean, last week on Friday, have JD Bunkus on his own podcast posted on Twitter, but initially recorded. Leaves it on the Twitter page of Toronto Sportsnet radio station, the Fan 590. Then we have, we'll claim that this iteration of the Raps have been done. Do that sometime in the morning Eastern time, and I'm gonna go the afternoon to Overdrive 1050, the late afternoon show of Toronto radio station TSN 1050, having featured a claim by co-host Brian Hayes that that the Raps had needed to embrace the tank. Well, the Raps are it's already been such a disaster that the Raps are already going down. To me, I'd say the Raps are likely going to have to be sellers during the NBA's trade deadline, which I believe is coming up, early next month. There's no sugarcoating this. President Ujiri and GM Webster, by having run back the Raps roster as much as possible, simply took it back, unintentionally though, to where it is now. It's been kind of a mixed bag in terms of playoff success for the Raps. During the COVID disrupted 2019-20 season, the Raps won a playoff series, losing in the second round. The following season, the Raps didn't even make the play-in round. Play-in round having featured for each conference teams finishing neither higher than 7th nor lower than 10th. The top 6 teams in each conference on winning percentage automatically getting to go into the postseason, but for the first and second place teams, their opponents to be decided via the play-in round. Among those 4 teams in the top 10, but not in the top 6. Last season, the Raps finished in 5th, and thus in an automatic playoff spot in their own conference. This season, it looks like the Raptors will struggle just to finish 10th or better in their conference. There's another game I believe coming up, but my God, these Raps are the Canucks of the NBA. And it's a good thing that I follow Canadian NHL teams, because I really want the Raps if the Raps don't win a Stanley Cup equivalent, hopefully for at least one of the Canucks, Alberta teams, Jets, Leafs, Sens to do so. I respect the Habs, and yes, admire their success, particularly during the NHL's so-called expansion era, basically the 1967-68 season onward. And perhaps a more competitive Habs squad will put pressure on the non-Habs Canadian teams to up their own games. Maybe the success of the Seattle Kraken will finally prompt the Canucks front office to make changes, because, well, the Canucks haven't had a team that close to them for a while. I believe Calgary is like over 500 kilometers, almost 1,000 kilometers away. Kraken aren't even, I believe, 300 kilometers. I don't believe 300 kilometers exists between Rogers Arena and Climate Pledge one. And we can go on about whether Climate Pledge Arena is climate friendly, but that's just the name it was given, so it is what it is. So yeah, maybe the success of the Seattle Kraken will finally prompt the Canucks front office to make big changes. After all, this Canucks season, like the Raptors one, has been a disaster. 3-2 regulation loss to the Oilers. The Oilers did let up off the gas a little bit, but there's no doubt that these Oilers so badly needed to win that game after having let loads of points on the table earlier on. The Oilers are now in a top 3 divisional spot, but can't take that for granted. The Leafs have been in a top 3 divisional spot since almost pretty much consistently from last November. 14 points, I believe, against the fourth place, ahead of the fourth place team in that division. It's pretty good. Where the Leafs can win a playoff series, as always, is to be determined. But again, hopefully the Raps will not end up going on a long drought of playoff series in terms of playoff series wins, because that wouldn't be good. And it's not like Toronto sports teams have, it's not like Toronto's pro sports teams, or at least those that are in the so-called major leagues, have won loads of playoff series. Maybe we could look to the Argos, having won a Grey Cup, and having won multiple Grey Cups during this century alone. You could look at Toronto FC, having won a championship and having won an MLS championship and having made it that far a couple of other times, but losing. But those are based on on games that playoff series that are decided in one game, as opposed to multiple games, as has been the case with the NBA, NHL, MLB. And when it's come to the NHL, when it comes to the NBA, the Raps have one championship. And although, I'm not looking for the Raps to get there, just to start to get towards winning a playoff series, because until they do, there's no point in saying that these Raps are equivalents to Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, once the Raps win a playoff series, you can have a conversation about, the Raps, should be in the mix, but only after they win a playoff series. And they've gone 2 straight seasons without winning one. This one looks like it'll be a third. And we all know what the Raptors can do. Yeah, it's been a disaster. Just like for the Canucks. The Leafs, as always, we can quibble about where the Leafs are playoff ready and all, but the Raps sure as hell aren't. They're not even in a play-in spot. And even if they do, if it's 9th or 10th, if the Raps finish 7th or 8th, they just have to win one game beyond the regular season to qualify for playoff action. But if the finish is 9th or 10th, they'll have to win 2. 2 in a row. Won't be easy. Anyway, go Raptors go. Go Leafs go. And in terms of Canadian national teams, go Canada go.